no man could bind him. I might have to just go right into that. Oh wait, no, because that is a verse later in Luke, for he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of man, for oftentimes it had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters, and he broke the bands, and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. That's in parentheses in this version, and it's later, verse 29, whereas abode in the tombs at the end of verse 27. 28 is Jesus came to him, and he cried, asked him, what have I to do with you, son of God? I beseech you that you torment me not. So maybe I can move verse 29 from Luke earlier to fit along with the explanation from Mark. Because Mark, after it says, his dwelling among the tombs, just goes right into, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because he had often been bound with fetters, and chains plucked asunder, the fetters broke to pieces, neither could they maintain him. Yeah, I think that would work. Who had his dwelling among the tombs? Mark, verse 3, the second half of that verse, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had often been bound with fetters and chains. Luke, verse 29, for he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for oftentimes it had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters. The question then is, should I put it after that event where he goes before Jesus and cries out, what have I to do with you? Or should I have all these explanations before, as it goes in Mark? There is a reason why I would lean towards doing it in the style that Luke does, and that's because after the man cried out, what have I to do with you? It then explains the next verse that Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, then the explanation, then Jesus asked him, what is your name? So it doesn't seem, like I mentioned last time, as in Mark, that Jesus is first commanding the demons come out of him, and then before they actually come out, he's stopping and asking him, what's your name? Then they have a short conversation. He says, we are legion, don't send us out of the country. Into the abyss. And then they asked to send us in the swine. And Jesus did send them. So it's like Jesus commanded them to leave, but they disobey. And they just don't. I don't know how else to see it. I mean, he says, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. What's your name? Let's talk. That's just how it goes in Mark. But in Luke, it doesn't have that first command, come out of him. It just says, he did command them to come out. And all the explanation of what he's like. For oftentimes it caught him, he was kept bound in chains and fetters, and he broke the bands and was driven the devil into the wilderness. And then Jesus asked, what's your name? So saying, for he had commanded him, it does mean that had just happened. And then it goes to the next verse, and Jesus asked him, saying, what is your name? So it leaves a little room to interpret this, that perhaps this questioning, saying he had asked him this question and he said, what's your name? It leaves a little room to believe maybe he had all the questions before he said, come out of the man. I would prefer it if he had the conversation, what is your name? The demons speak. They beg him not to torment him. They ask to go into the swine. And then Jesus says, okay. But instead of just saying okay, he says the command that's stated in Mark, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. That's what I would like. That way it doesn't seem as if Jesus gave a command and they disobeyed, or they successfully delayed being kicked out. But I don't know if I can do that, since that command does come directly before, and he asked him, what is your name? What does Matthew say? They cry to him, there was a good way off, then they ask him about going into the swine. The only thing that it says that Jesus told them is go. And when they came out, they went into the herd of swine. So in Luke it says he permitted them, but Matthew it clearly says the words go. That's a command, go. So maybe I could put the conversation then the command. Verse 9, what is your name? All the rest of their interaction. Then verse 8, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Or I could put go out of the man, you unclean spirit. Or maybe I should just leave it as it is in this confusing manner. Mark and Luke clearly have the question, what is your name, before the answer, Legion, for we are many, and then besought him much that he would not send them out of the country, that they would go into the swine. They besought him that he would not commit them to go into the deep, so out of the country, into the deep, into the abyss. Mark and Luke are very clear. Jesus asks for their name, they give their name, Legion, and then go right into, don't send us into hell, please send us into the swine, and then Jesus says go, permitting them to go. In Matthew, it doesn't have any command come out of him. It just goes right into, they arrive, then they ask him about going into the swine. Obviously, the question had to come first after they arrived and before they were sent into the swine, which means that when Jesus said go, that's the only command that's recorded in Matthew. So perhaps that is the only command he actually gave them, which is the command recorded differently by Mark, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. So maybe it is after the question of what their name is. Luke has a little bit of wiggle room. He had commanded the unclean spirits to come out of the man, and Jesus asked him, saying, what is your name? Maybe. Matthew, there seems to be a lot more tolerance for that, since they just show up and ask him to go into the swine, and Jesus says go, so that could be his one and only command. Mark has the command first, then they have a conversation, not leaving. Forthwith, Jesus gave them leave. But maybe I should just leave it how it is in Mark. With the first command, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Then right into the question, what is your name? Even though I think that might not be how it actually went down. Then there's short conversation. And then where it says, and forthwith Jesus gave them leave, I would put that command from Matthew. Said to them, go. That is giving them leave. Go. So there would be two commands. The first one, then the question and the conversation, and then Jesus saying go. The reason why I'm struggling with this is just that how could these demons refuse to leave after Jesus commanded them, come out of this man. Come out of the man, you unclean spirit. How could they resist long enough to answer the question, still in his body? My name is Legion, for we're many. Still there. How could they resist? I mean, not how could they resist. How could they disobey? But I don't want to change anything just because I don't like it. So I'll just leave it. Oh, this one hurts me, but I'll just leave it. Okay, so if I'm going to do that, then I guess I should continue on with all the explanation of him, including from Luke, instead of having that later after they cry out, what have I to do with you? What have we to do with you? So, the tombs, Oftentimes it caught him. That's after a period. I could just end here at tombs. Then just go right into 4. Oftentimes it caught him. And he was kept bound with chains. And I can continue with Mark. Because that he had often been bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder, broken, neither could any man tame him. He was kept bound with chains and fetters, and he broke the bands and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. So I could say driven of the devil into the wilderness after, neither could any man tame him. He was driven into the wilderness. Night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs crying. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so that means I have to begin now with 4. Oftentimes I caught him. Yeah, so I'll end here with the period. Tombs. 4. Oftentimes it had caught him. And he was kept bound with chains. Mark says, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains. And instead of and he was, maybe I could say, should I just go with and he was kept bound with chains and fetters, but no man could bind him? No. I'll just go right into and no man could bind him from Mark. And no man could bind him. No, not with chains. Bound with fetters and chains. So it says chains twice in Mark. And he was kept. I don't know why Luke says he was kept bound with chains and fetters and he broke them. If he broke them, then he wasn't kept. He broke free. If no man could bind him with chains, then he's not kept bound in chains. I have the option of not using that word, so I'm just going to have it like that. No man could bind him, no, not with chains. Bind or bound. I already used bind. And chains. So and is both, because it's the next word in Luke. And no man could bind him. And he was kept bound, not bind. With chains. Okay, with chains is both. Chains and in fetters. No man could bind him, no, not with chains or fetters. That would have to be because he had often been bound. Okay, that's what I could do. I'll continue on with Mark.